Good morning, everyone. It's September 2nd. It's the Konflux community call. This call is being recorded. If you don't like that, please hang up. And this call is a community call, and it might have people from many different orgs on it. Keep that in mind in your conversation, please. The agenda is in the meeting invite. We'll put it back into the chat for everyone. The first point is the ADR review, and before I get into the one ADR we have, we merged the Konflux Governance Committee, merged our ADR that we've talked about in previous meetings, and I asked Ralph to say a bit of that.
Yeah, I'll just say real briefly about it. The doc is linked here in the notes. I'll put it in sidebar too so you can see. But this, just for kind of recapping from last week, we felt like the ADR process has been stuck for a variety of reasons, but we want to just try to reboot it to see if we can get a little faster throughput and clearer expectations about getting decisions made and committed, right? Because we need them to move forward. So core to that is that the Konflux Governance Committee, KGC, which you're seeing that acronym pop up everywhere now, that me and Brian and Andrew as elected are going to have the authority to decide, make the decision on ADRs. And there's a clear process in the doc for how to get requests for comments from the whole community. So every time you want to propose an ADR, bring it to this meeting and announce it. And that starts a 2-week period where everybody should be coming and commenting on your ADR. At the end of the day, me and Brian and Andrew as a team will make the decision on them. And we'll see how that works out. This is kind of our first week heading down that road. Brian and Andrew and I are meeting once a week to process those, so that we'll start feeding more ADRs into this meeting.
Yep. So with this, it's a goal to try to speed up the processing of ADRs. It is not our goal to make unilateral decisions on things without considering feedback, but it is a goal of mine in particular. Like right now, we have this problem where it kind of takes unanimous consent to get an ADR merged, and we have a lot of people involved in the project, and getting unanimous consent is really hard. So this gives us, I think, a clear process where we can get consent, but maybe not unanimous consent, and it's up to Ralph, Andrew, and I to decide when we have enough consent and enough of the issues have been dealt with, and we will take the action on anything that's lingering, make decisions, and get things merged in order to expedite it. So we're going to start working through the open ADRs, trying to clear that backlog. And the first one that we have up is ADR 47. So this should become a regular part of the meeting at the beginning of the community meeting, where we announce what ADRs are up for review and ask you to please make sure that if you have comments and feedback that you've lodged those for our consideration in the review. So ADR 47 for cache and container build layers is up. We reviewed it on the 27th. Get your comments in before the 10th. We are going to hopefully resolve it on that date. We can't guarantee it because if we don't have enough information, then we may defer it. But it is our goal to make a decision on that one in review on the 10th. Any questions about that process? Okay, next up then is Adam Kaplan donating Tecton Q. Is Adam here? Maybe not. Would someone like to ping Adam and see if he wants to come and represent this?
I'll ping him.
Yeah, okay, we can move on to the next one. Missing tooling for maintaining repositories with enabled hermetic builds. Is the person here for that one?
Yes. Hello,
yes.
Guys. This is Paul. I'm here with my colleague Chris Bentley, and we are from Insights Operations team. Just to give you like some history, what we did. Insights team enabled hermetic builds for several GitHub repositories, which made repositories owners or maintainers not so easy. And we created make files and actually one file and few scripts to have update RPMs or Python dependencies to generate needed log files for build pipelines. And then we started copying these scripts between repositories because we had to do this for other services, and like small changes in each repo, which now makes them quite hard to maintain. And it would be really nice if we can eliminate somehow this generation of these log files by users and maybe let it generate by pipelines. And if that is not possible, there is really need to have some common repository with all these tools which can be used by repository maintainers. Richard, do you want to add something to it?
I think that summarizes it pretty well. You know, we had a few goals in mind here: more deeply integrate and embed hermetic builds within Konflux, and move the burden of learning release engineering from service owners to the Konflux toolset. Because I know I found this out very quickly, and release engineering, it can be an entirely full-time job, and for a lot of our service owners currently right now, don't necessarily have the bandwidth to do everything that we've had to go through. So essentially, it's been a handful of folks like myself and Pavel going through and essentially being release engineers for them and kind of helping them out and onboarding them to Konflux, as well as our requirement for credit builds and stuff. Apologies for the noise. I've got some HVAC folks here. So we kind of wanted to embed that, within potentially Konflux itself or Tecton files. So it's as easy for a service owner to say, hey, enable hermetic builds. My project is a Python project. Here's the pip files, or it's a JavaScript project. Here's the package JSON log files, or I require, things like RPMs, and provide those, more easily consumable and configurable YAML Tecton configuration files from a service owner's perspective to those kinds of things. Or potentially, like Pavel had mentioned, we could go some sort of common toolset route where a service owner could, for example, pip install something that would be Konflux hermetic build tools. And then, similarly for like Python or JavaScript stuff. And it may end up being a combination of all of the things that I just mentioned. We did just kind of want to bring that up with the community and get some thoughts around that.
I have not had the ability to read all the things you linked there, but I guess I'm missing like what is you feel to be overly complicated about it, because I think it's modeled on something like any kind of lock file, right? Like a Go mod file or a locked requirements.txt file that's pinned to versions and digests. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. You can't really put it into a Git or into a Tecton pipeline, right? Because you would miss the main benefit, which is that each time you build, you get exactly the dependencies you specified. You put it into the Tecton pipeline, you're essentially just dynamically generating references to the dependencies in a different way. Ralph?
I was going to say that I see things that are painful here. Like, I hear what they're talking about. Like, so one is with Python. It's true that I think it's true that it's common practice to lock your dependencies just like you normally do for JavaScript and for Go. But because we require building wheels from source, you need an additional requirements.txt file that includes the dependencies that you need to build the wheels of your dependencies. And that is typically never present on the first pass in like some upstream repo that you're bringing to Konflux. And we have like scripts linked to in our documentation that guide people on like a set of incantations they can make to produce that secondary log file. But like you have to read and click and follow those links, figure out why it doesn't work and so on. I agree with what Brian was saying that I don't think we can embed it in the Tecton pipeline, because then you're losing this reproducible builds, predictable builds kind of output, but like a common set of tooling or some easier way to invoke that. That is interesting, and not the road of client tooling is not something we've been pursuing much, and perhaps it's time to think about that.
Well, the reason I'd mentioned the Tecton files is I had also envisioned a workflow kind of like, okay, well, the user specified they want a hermetic build, and here's the requirement files, things like that, and then there would be something, some other kind of job, like we currently get Konflux bot MRs put in that says, hey, here's an update for your base image. We saw a similar workflow or kind of envisioned a similar workflow where it's like Konflux bots, like, hey, here's an updated package log file for your hermetic builds or something like that. But I mean, obviously you can reject that MR just to kind of, I don't know, make that a little easier for the end user and their consumption.
MintMaker does that today. So the question is, why aren't you getting those? Once you have a lock file, MintMaker should be sending you MRs maintaining that RPM lock file for you.
That's not something I've seen. Maybe Pavel can correct me.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure.
I can provide the context. Hey, I'm William. I'm also working with the folks. I think the burden or why it didn't work was that Python managers, or there are several Python package managers, and I think the Konflux currently supports only pip log file, I think, and requirements.txt, and some of our projects use the poetry. So we somehow, some of the project managed to create the requirements.txt using poetry, and probably that was kind of the reason that it didn't support it poetry, or some probably can use UE. Maybe community can improve this and add support for more of those. But actually, I wanted also, as we were speaking about this image basis, whether the MintMaker can also handle changes of the RPM log files. When there is a image base change, whether it can also update the RPM log files with it.
So William, I feel sure that it does that today, and maybe there's something about your team's configuration that's causing it to not do that. I received a pull request on one of my repos just this morning.
I linked one into chat just now.
Just to explain it, that like in the rpms.in.yaml file, you include only the kind of specific RPMs you want. Like you want only Vim or you want only Emacs. And then the tooling will resolve that to all of the transitive dependencies or whatever that small set of packages you want is. And Renovate will update that second file. So if the base image changes to suddenly start including that package by default, Renovate should like zero out your lock file, right? You don't need to install any new RPM because the base image suddenly starts providing it. That should work just the same as it does for requirements.txt or any of the other supported lock file formats. We can dig offline to try and figure out why not. I mean, guys, I'll say that said, I feel like there is still like a UX problem here. The initial onboarding is hard, right? I mean, they just enable hermetic builds, and you got to go find the parameter. And you used to have to set that dev package managers flag too, which was a pain, but that's no longer the case. And then you got to figure out that where's this RPM client tooling to create your lock file. That's hard to do too. If imagine in the UI we had a button just like when you go to onboard a component. If you're looking at an existing component and there was a send a hermetic build proposal button that you could click, and you specify the few RPMs that you need, and build service does the work for you and sends a pull request that enables the parameter, gives you your initial lock file and your in file, and maybe it's wrong, but it gives you a starting point to go from to get through that.
That all sounds great, and but the reason I think this doesn't exist, Ralph, is because we're expecting DNF team to provide this. Like we're expecting the upstream DNF to provide this kind of functionality as a DNF feature, right?
That's true.
And so we can talk about whether we have to do something to make it easier, or we can go back to the DNF community and try to prod or prompt them to make this better in DNF itself, or we can try to contribute a DNF plugin that makes this better. Even if we have to do the work, it feels like it would be helping move DNF more in the right direction if we could somehow do it in the DNF community, even if it's a plugin that we maintain.
Just for everyone's awareness, there is work that has been done on a manifest plugin for DNF. So if anyone's interested in hacking on that, the code exists and just needs some more extension to cover some use cases we're missing before we could consider really porting over from that prototype block file prototype tool. There's the author gave a presentation at FOSDEM about it. I linked in sidebar. I'll put it in the call notes too.
So I think what would help move this forward, I want to be sensitive of time, move forward, but I think what would help us with this is a better or a fully sort of fleshed out requirements document, not about any of the technical details, but just about the experience. Like, what do we want the experience to be like, right? And then we can go figure out how to implement it. Would the folks like Pavel and Richard, would you guys be interested in helping to drive the sort of experience document with us? What would your team like to experience?
I think so. We can do that.
Okay.
So what is the, like, what we agreed here? You're saying that it's not a good idea to generate these log files through some kind of pipelines because we want to have these log files stored in Git repository, right?
Yep.
So most probably the only option is like to have some kind of bot which would open MR with these changes.
Or we could do that, but what if when you're onboarding, you would basically have like one command, like a pip freeze style command that would just take your current configuration and create your requirements file for you, and then you just commit it to Git.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have a bot to maintain it. I mean, we have the bot to maintain that already. It's the initial creation that it wouldn't do right now.
Okay, so I think me and Richard, if you agree, we can create this requirements document, what we think the experience should be like, and we can discuss further.
Okay. That
Yeah,
would be great.
That sounds good. I think we've all agree on that point that it's the initial like onboarding is the where the effort is involved, but like moving forward, it's easy enough to update block files and stuff for RPMs, etc. for your project. It's just that initial hurdle.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Are there any other questions or comments on that topic? Not. I see Adam has joined. Adam, you had a topic that we skipped. Thanks for joining. And you want to talk about donating Tecton Q?
Yes. So this is kind of an output from an upstream conversation about Q. And we had initially filed a feature request. I think I had filed a feature request way back about having the Q project integrate with Tecton. We've since kind of done our own thing to enable Q to manage our pipeline runs. And I guess my sense from the conversation in the Q community is that it probably makes most sense for this to live on its own and not necessarily be part of sort of core Q itself, because it adds more dependencies to the project, and they already have established patterns for external Q managers, so to speak. So I think we're now at the point where it probably makes sense for this to kind of graduate out of Konflux CI, and we bring it to the Tecton organization so that it sort of lives alongside the thing that it's managing. This isn't something that is necessarily Konflux specific, and it can kind of have a more permanent home. And I think that's something that even we in the Konflux community thought would be the right thing to do long term. So I guess sounds like now is the time to do it.
Yeah. Is your question like, should we or should we not? Or is it like, I
guess
can't
it's
imagine that anyone would argue that we should not do this.
Yeah, so I think if now's the time, then it feels like it's almost more like, hey, heads up before. And I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to reach out to the Tecton governing board to actually propose that we donate this to the Tecton project.
Yeah. What's needed? Is it just like, does it need a TEP or?
It probably would need a TEP. I think that's the norm, but that's something we can easily check in Slack first.
Okay. There happens to be a community meeting today for Tecton, actually, that I think I will be at. It is, well, it was, I thought it was today. Now I don't see.
So they have a working group meeting Wednesday.
Maybe it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It's tomorrow at noon. Yeah.
Yep.
So we could even bring it up then. But like if you're volunteering to put the TEP together, like I don't think anybody, I can't imagine someone's going to say don't do that.
Yep.
Ralph?
You just got to talk to Gal. Gal has the
Yeah.
vast majority of the contributions into the Tecton Q
As
repos.
it-
He needs to
if
be
it-
like on board. I can't imagine he wouldn't be, but talk to Gal
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And if he wants to write the TEP too, he definitely deserves the credit for all the work he's put into it.
Cool. No, I think that would be great. It would be a great donation. Let's see. And that is all the topics we have for today. Is there any other topics anyone wants to raise or any comments about the Tecton Q topic? William?
Yeah, something fresh. Probably just me not understanding correctly how the trusted artifact should use.
Mhm.
This is mainly also around the topic of the hermetic builds that some of the dependencies, especially those binary ones that use C bindings, namely RD Kafka, I need to be built in our containers, and it takes a bit of time for each build to do every time. Whether there is a way to either cache it somehow or offload it to another build, like I don't know, a container build or artifact build, push it somewhere and use that. But I kind of realized that probably the latter one, to push it somewhere, might not be okay with the conforma that requires us to use the images or artifacts respectively from an approved registries.
Sorry,
So
what is it that you would build?
librd Kafka, or basically any like C library styles dependencies for a Python project, for example.
Okay.
Because folks in Hermeto said that they wouldn't or haven't planned to cache it. I don't know how that would work, honestly. Whether there would be, I don't know, cache miss, and then we would trigger a build if it's not there, somehow push it, or it would be.
So one thing we're going to have soon, probably within the next couple of weeks, Alex can maybe comment on this. I see him here. Is we're going to have OCI layer caching soon. It's what that ADR I was mentioning about. So if you build that in a stage of your Docker file, no, that's not going to work. That's caching. I'm thinking like there might be a way for you to build it and then put the build into a trusted artifact. You have to think about it.
Yeah.
There's Ralph?
I think William was kind of pointing at that. Imagine if he split it into a second component just for libardy Kafka, and he built it as a full container image that just included the libardy Kafka built bits in its file system, push it up into Quay. He could then, in his final image, do from reference to that image and copy those bits over for his build, and he would successfully get caching. But he was pointing out that the Conforma default rules forbid building from an image that's not in the approved registries list. And of course, he's building from Quay.io Red Hat user workloads. This becomes like downstream in Red Hat, like a question of managing that policy. Like we could, this is more work than like we should have to do to make caching work, but here's a way we could make it work today. We could set up a release plan admission to publish your librd Kafka bits to a controlled registry location, Quay.io / approved base images. We just made it up, right? And then we can add that to the approved list for all teams or just your team to use. But there's like overhead in managing that. It feels like there should be a better caching strategy here that we just don't have.
There's a thing that we don't do with Conforma, which is like recursive checking of policies, and we haven't done it because it's expensive. But with some of the VSA work that we're doing now, it could be that it will be less expensive in the future, and we could enable that, right? So that as you would push that image that you want to build from, it's checked at push time, and the VSAs get attached to it. And then when you build the image from it, it would see that you're using an image that's from some location that's not explicitly allowed, and it could then go and try and check the attributes of it to see if it would be acceptable anyway. And it should be very fast at that point, because it would just be checking the results of checks that ran before and were saved in the registry. So that might be the way to go. Andrew, I think you had thought about this before. Do you have comment on recursive policy checks?
I mean, our current approach is definitely those VSAs. When we have thought about use cases for it in the past, we determined that it's not something we're going to do. So there's a possibility of having a VSA that's generated and an attestation is made for us to be able to inspect and leverage in the policy. Or another potential alternative is to just release it to some location which is approved for you to pull content from. It would pass whatever policy necessary to get to that location. But then you wouldn't need to pass a VSA check, or rather, you wouldn't have any just-in-time recursion, because you would have already validated that recursive step when releasing previously.
Yeah. Okay. Both of those would work. William, would you mind opening a feature, or a GitHub issue would actually be fine too. You could open it in a Konflux CI community. But either way, would you mind opening one so that we can pick one of these approaches and remember who we're doing it primarily for, who the requester is? I think we have a way to do it in the near future. Is the answer?
Yeah, it's more relative to the downstream here. I acknowledge that, but even if we get an approved list where we would push it, there might be still a question or an exception. There might be still a question of how we would provide the sources for it, because it's a part of the stuff that you productize, basically. How a customer that would be using that downstream would get the source of it.
Yeah, keep that. Please add that to the issue or feature request, because it could be that we need one extra thing, which is some sort of way to concatenate the source from the image you're building from with the one you're building currently and release it all together, right? And like that could be a switch that is possible to add.
Which repo you want it to be open for?
If you want to open it upstream, I think Konflux CI/community.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any other topics today? All right. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.